Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the rulebook for fairness in Indian government jobs, Article 16 of the Constitution. And really, it all boils down to one big idea: trying to make a truly level playing field for everyone.
But before we get tangled up in legal clauses, let's just start with a really simple question that gets right to the point. What does a fair process for getting a government job actually look like? That question is exactly what Article 16 sets out to answer.
And the answer begins with a simple but incredibly powerful idea. There should be one rule for everybody.
All right, let's get into the text itself. Article 16, Clause 1. This is the bedrock, the cornerstone of the whole thing. It guarantees every single citizen an equal shot when it comes to government jobs. The goal is pretty straightforward. Positions should be filled based on what you know, not who you know.
So let's make this real. Imagine a young woman named Priya. She's applying for a job in the state administration. This clause means that the door to that opportunity has to be just as wide open for her as it is for anyone else. Her application has to be judged on its own merits, period.
But, equal opportunity can sound a little vague, can't it? So the very next part of the article gets really specific, creating what is basically an anti-discrimination shield to protect applicants just like Priya. And what's so crucial here is how specific this is. The Constitution doesn't just say, hey, don't discriminate. No, it lists out 7 exact things that are completely off limits: religion, race, caste, sex, descent, where you were born, and where you live. These are the absolute red lines. So for Priya, this means nobody can look at her application and just toss it aside because of her background. This clause literally forces the system to ignore all of that and focus only on her qualifications and whether she's the right person for the job.
Now, the framers of the Constitution were smart. They knew that just preventing future discrimination wasn't enough to fix deep-seated historical inequalities. So Article 16 takes a huge step further. It moves from just protection to proactive inclusion.
I mean, this chart says it all, doesn't it? If one group holds 95% of the jobs, can you really say the opportunity is equal for that other 5%? Article 16's answer is a clear no, and it provides a powerful tool to address this kind of imbalance: reservations. To tackle this, the Constitution sets up a 3-step framework for affirmative action, or what we commonly call reservations. It's a system designed to build representation at every single stage of a person's career. So let's break it down.
First up, you have reservations right at the entry point. So for someone like Samir, who comes from a historically backward community, this means a certain number of jobs are set aside to make sure that he and others from his community get a fair shot at getting into public service in the first place.
But the support doesn't just stop at the front door. Years down the line, when Samir is doing well and is up for a promotion, this next clause allows reservations to apply there too. This is to make sure that representation happens all the way up the ladder, not just at the bottom rung.
And finally, what happens if some of those reserved jobs aren't filled in a particular year? Do those opportunities just vanish? Nope. The carry-forward rule kicks in. It prevents them from disappearing. They're simply moved to the next hiring cycle, making sure the goal of representation is met over time.
Now, the Constitution isn't a static document. It's a living one. And a pretty recent amendment added a whole new dimension to this system, shifting the focus away from social history and toward someone's current economic situation.
This number, 10%, represents a huge change, a new reservation for what we call the economically weaker sections, or EWS.
And it is absolutely critical to understand the difference here. The reservations we've talked about so far are based on historical social disadvantages linked to caste. This new EWS quota, under Clause 6, is based entirely on a person's current economic status.
This creates a brand new path for someone we'll call Anita. Her family might not belong to a community eligible for social reservations, but if they're facing financial hardship, the EWS quota gives her a separate reserved lane into public service.
Of course, no system can be perfectly rigid. Article 16 is actually pretty pragmatic, and it includes a couple of very specific, limited exceptions to its own rules for practical, real-world reasons.
First, even though you normally can't discriminate based on where someone lives, Clause 3 gives Parliament the power to make residency a requirement for certain jobs. Just think about a post in a rural area where speaking the local dialect is absolutely essential to do the job. This exception makes that possible.
And second,
Clause 5 is all about protecting religious autonomy. It allows an institution connected to a specific religion to require that its key officials also belong to that faith, which, makes a lot of sense for maintaining its unique character.
So that's the whole structure of Article 16. We've gone through it piece by piece. Now let's do a quick recap of the sequence just to see how it all fits together and to really lock it in.
All right, let's run through the order so it sticks. It starts with the big promises. 16.1, equal opportunity for all. Then 16.2, no unfair discrimination. Then comes the first practical exception, 16.3, for local jobs. Next up is the core social justice package, 16.4, reservations to get in, 16.4a, promotions for representation higher up, and 16.4b, carrying forward any unfilled posts. After that, we have the second specific exception in 16.5 for religious institutions. And finally, the newest layer, 16.6, the quota for economic weakness. See how it flows? From a broad promise down to the specific mechanics.
And if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Article 16 isn't just about formal equality, the idea that everyone starts at the same line. It's about achieving something deeper, called substantive equality, making sure everyone has a fair chance to actually finish the race. The whole goal is to build a public service that truly reflects the public it serves.
And that leaves us with one last big question. This entire framework has been debated and changed for over 75 years. So the question for all of us today is, does this intricate balance of equality, representation, and special exceptions still strike the right chord for modern India? Thanks for watching The Explainer.